Hi everyone, and welcome back to the MRE Security YouTube channel. My name is Evan Isaac, and today we'll be taking a look at how to install and use Burp Suite in 2025. So I want to preface this video by saying if you do run the latest Kali version, you will already have Burp Suite installed. But if you are trying to install Burp Suite on Ubuntu or Debian or maybe even Windows, this is the tutorial for you. So heading on over to your browser, we can type in Portswigger, who is the creator and founder of Burp Suite, and we'll just type in Burp Suite install. And we can see here we have the installing Burp Suite Professional and Community Edition from Portswigger. And we can go on and download the Community Edition. If you do want to download the Professional, you can, but Professional does cost, I believe, $500. Beware of that. So we'll click on Community Edition and we'll click Download for Linux x64. And it may just take a second, and we see that we do have a bash script here. So we'll open up our terminal and we can see in our downloads folder, we do have .sh file. We'll just do a chmod to this and put Burp Suite there. And we'll do a / Burp Suite Community Edition. And what this is going to do is this is going to unpack Java onto our Linux system. So we're going to just keep clicking next. It's going to extract the files and download Burp Suite Community Edition. This may take a second, but while this is going, we're going to install something called Foxy Proxy. And Foxy Proxy is going to be the proxy we're going to use to connect our browser to Burp Suite on port 8080. So heading on over to Foxy Proxy, we can go to the Chrome Web Store, and in our case, since I am using Firefox, we'll go over to Firefox add-ons on Mozilla. We'll click on Add, and now we can see that it is in our extensions folder. So we can just click on here, and we see that there is Foxy Proxy here. Now, we are going to leave this alone for now since we need to do a few things with Burp Suite before we can start this, and we'll click on Finish. When that is done, we should be able to go over here and just type in Burp Suite, and we can see Burp Suite Community Edition. We can click on it, and we can see that we get a pop-up, and it says Temporary Project in Memory. This is the basic and default that we're going to be using for Community Edition. If you do have the professional version, you can use something like this where you can save burp files so you can come back to them at any point in time. This is great for if you're trying to do a bug bounty or have a client. You can just go on here, put in their information, and then that'll be saved onto your disk. But because we're using Community Edition, like I said before, we're just going to click Next and start up Burp. Now again, this may take a second, and I understand that you will not be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to quickly change the font. So now that it's bigger, we can now see everything that's going on. But Burp Suite also has a pretty cool tool called Open Browser. And what this is going to do is this is going to have a Chromium-based browser pop up with the proxy already set to port 8080. So if we type in, let's say, google.com, and we head on over to Burp Suite, we can go over to the HTTP history and we can see that we retrieve all the Google information that is being displayed onto the page and anything that's requesting from the browser itself. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go to http:// and then Burp Suite, or I believe it may just be Burp, but I'll just try to put Burp Suite and see what happens. And it says Burp Suite Community Edition. Welcome to Burp Suite Community Edition with the CA certificate. So we're going to download this, and it's going to be a .dir file. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into our Firefox, head on over to the three dots and click on Settings. From here, we're just going to type in cert and see what pops up, and we can view certificates. And what we could do is we can go over to Authorities, click Import. We can head on over to our downloads and click on the cert.dir. And what this is going to do is this is going to install the Portswigger CA or Certificate Authority so we can use Burp Suite with our Firefox browser. And we'll just click Trust to everything because we know that this is a trusted site. And from there, we should have the certificate installed. So with that, now we can go on to set up our Foxy Proxy. So let's head on over to Foxy Proxy. We'll click on this gear icon. Excuse me, not this gear icon. We'll click on the extension itself, and we'll click on Options. And what this is going to do is this is going to send us over to the Options panel of Foxy Proxy where we can begin creating proxies. So we'll click on Add, and we'll just name this Burp Suite. we'll go to the host name and we will do 127.0.0.1, which is your local host. And since Burp Suite runs on port 8080, we'll put here port 8080. You could change the color. I like to change it to green just so I know, because there are other proxies that you can use, such as OAuth. So with this, you can click on save. And now that it saves the configuration, if we head back over to Foxy Proxy, we can see that Burp Suite is right here ready to go. So clicking on it, we can go to, let's say, emorysecurity.com. And as it's loading, if we go to our Burp Suite, scroll down a little bit, we could see that we retrieve information from Emory Security, meaning that our information is going to the website and that we are retrieving that information from the website into Burp Suite, which is perfect. So let's look a little bit into what Burp Suite has to offer, because this is an industry standard tool that almost every single application security consultant, penetration tester uses on a day-to-day basis. The first thing is you're going to see the dashboard. The dashboard is really not too useful if you don't have the professional edition of Burp Suite. If you don't worry too much about this. Essentially what it's going to do is it's going to showcase your information about what you have within your sitemaps. It's going to show the different information about what you have within your vuln scanners, how many vulnerabilities you found, all that stuff. But because we're on Community Edition, I can't really show you that right now. If we go over to Target, you can see that there are a bunch of different sitemaps. And these sitemaps will show you all the different kinds of pages that you see by default on any application that you go to. So if you go to Google, you'll see google.com with the slash, and then you'll see a bunch of different things that get loaded and rendered within Google. But because I don't really have an application to test right now, this is the best that I could do. So for instance, on emorysecurity.com, just by loading the homepage, you also load the 404, the about, the blog, the CDN-CGI, and a bunch of others. We can go over to scope and you can add specific scope. So if you wanted to, you could put, let's say, emorysecurity.com, and you can also include subdomains. So if I have, let's say, test.emorysecurity.com, that'll also be within your scope, as well as issues. And this just goes through all the different kinds of issues that the burp scanner is going to identify while it's performing the scans. Will it identify a lot of these vulnerabilities? No. Have I ever seen it identify an SSTI or server-side template injection or an RCE? No, I haven't seen that before. But I have seen it come up with SQL injections. I have seen it come up with file path traversals before. I've also seen it come up with cross-site scripting. So this does work. It's just a pro feature that you need to buy for, again, about $500. So heading on to the proxy, we have a few things. Number one is you could see all the different kinds of requests synchronously. What I mean by that is you can sort things based on the number of the request. So again, the first thing that we checked out was Google. And as you can see, the first thing that shows up is Google at the home page, which is the slash or root directory. But if we keep scrolling down, we can see that we also checked out emorysecurity.com, and that was request number 56. If you want to get the specific host name, you could just filter it by clicking on it. If you want to go up, down, you can go up, down. It doesn't really matter. You can also go based on status code. So if you have a 404, you can click on it and you can see all the different kinds of status codes and sort them out based on the status code as well. You can do a bunch of different things that I'm not really going to go into within this. You can also see the request as well as the response, but I'm going to show you a little more about that in the repeater. You can also see the WebSocket history, which if you're on applications, chances are they do have some form of WebSocket. They're very hard to come by as far as vulnerabilities are concerned. They're not too dangerous if they're implemented properly, but that really goes for any web application security assessment. But what I will say is if you do have a messaging platform, most of the time they're going to be using WebSockets. So this is where you can find the history for that. And one of the big ones that you're going to be using is the Interceptor. So the Interceptor is, as it says, it intercepts traffic. So if we click on Intercept On, and let's say we go back to google.com, we can see that it automatically pops up with the request in hand, ready to go to be edited. So we can edit anything within this request and it won't really matter. So we can modify this and just say hello. Again, this really doesn't matter all too much. It's not going to make a difference within the request. But when you're done with this, you can click on forward to continue the request or send off the request, or you can click on forward all. So if it does a bunch of different things like JavaScript files, or it has a specific timer for, let's say, notifications, if you click on forward all, it'll forward everything within this space here, forward it automatically. But if we click on forward, we'll see that once it renders everything down, it'll show us the information. So we can click on continue to site, forward. As we can see, as we click on forward, more and more stuff goes. Click on forward all and click submit. We can see that it submits all those requests at one time. And we'll just let the Interceptor do its thing and turn it off. So we can head on over to the Intruder. So the Intruder is a pretty big one, especially when it comes to rate limiting. And something that you're going to see a lot within web application security is something called email flooding or email bombing, depending on what the organization uses. And this is a great technique to use, especially with Intruder. Again, Community Edition, it does have a throttle within Intruder, but luckily for us, there is an extension called Turbo Intruder. So if you go over to the extensions page and click on the App Store, you can type in Turbo, and it'll come up here as Turbo Intruder. You click on install and it'll begin installing this information for you. There are a few packages that do require Python, and you will need to install Jython, but not really going to get into that right now. Just know in a future video, we will be going through a lot of these extensions and what they do, especially the ones that I love the most, which I'm not going to really tell you just yet. I think you should find out in the next video coming up. Going back to the Intruder though, what we could do, and we will head on over to the target. We'll click on sitemap and we'll just select something. So in my case, we'll just right click it. And here we can click on Intruder. When you right click on specific things, that could be on requests within the Interceptor, on the sitemap, which is right here, as well as the proxy HTTP history. When you right click on it, you can see a bunch of different information coming down. You can send it to Intruder, Repeater, Sequencer, Comparer, Decoder, Organizer. You can also show the response within the browser. So let's say you find a potential reflected cross-site scripting, but you don't really know which button you pressed. This is an awesome tool to use. You just click show response in browser. It'll give you a proxy link. You copy it over and you can paste it into your web browser. That'll showcase all the information over to your application, which is super nice. And you can see whether or not you do have that cross-site scripting vulnerability or something of the like. But nonetheless, you can do a few more things. If you do have extensions installed, this is where they'll be, and you can send it off to, let's say, Turbo Intruder. If you do have the engagement tools, which again is a pro-only feature, you have access to the Generate CSRF POC, which I think is a fantastic tool because you don't need to use a third party to create or generate any of your CSRF payloads. You can just easily come here, paste in the specific parameters you want to inject into your CSRF, and it'll automatically do it for you, which is super, super, super handy. Another handy thing is the curl command in Bash. So if you do find, let's say, a cross-site scripting, or you find an SQL injection, all you have to do is come here, click on copy as curl command, and you can paste that into your report. Super clean, super easy to do, and you don't have to deal with all this random data coming to and from the server. You can easily just put it into a curl command, the client can copy it, paste it, you're good to go. Last but not least is copy to file. Copy to file I love to use, especially for SQL injections, and this is because you can use the TAC R for requesting a file and just ship it off to SQL map, for instance. Super neat, super handy, and something that I strongly recommend people use. That being said, let's head on back over to the Intruder and take a look at how this works. So to start, you need to use these S-shaped looking symbols. I don't really know what they're called, but you have to add them to a specific parameter or a specific header that you want to use with the Intruder. So for instance, let's say we have a email bombing attack and you can send mass emails to an email parameter. And in our case, we're just going to put something like email, and then we'll do just evan.isaac@emorysecurity.com. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend like this actually works, and we'll click on the 8 within the accept. We'll click on add, and we can see that these squiggly brackets do show up and a huge panel shows up. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this does look like a lot, and I'm going to try to explain it to the best of my ability. It's really only two things that you need to use. The first one is a simple list. The second one is the numbers. And in this case, because we're using a number, we're going to stick to numbers. From 1 to 100, it's going to send 100 payloads. All this is doing a sequential 1 count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 100. But you can also add specific digits, or you could set specific rules. Then you have the resource pool. Again, you kind of need Pro for this, I believe. I don't think this is a full-fledged feature for the community edition because you still get rate limited. So just know that most of the time when it comes to this, you're going to have to either use Turbo Intruder or buy Pro to get the full experience of Burp Suite, but there's other ways to do it with different tools such as the OWASP Zap, which I will be doing a video on in the near future. But for now, we'll just leave it to existing, and this is just going to be the default. It's going to send 10 concurrent requests over to the website at a given time, and it also has auto throttling enabled, which basically means that if it shows, let's say 429 as the status code, it'll automatically throttle down and delay the requests a little bit so that way the server can catch up with all your requests. Additionally, you can find some basic settings that you could do as well, but again, nothing too interesting here. When you click on Start Attack, you're going to see that it does go a little bit slow, and it does give you a warning that you do have a demo version of Burp Suite Intruder. And as you can see, it's going really slow, but it's also showing you specific information. And if we go to, let's say, the payload of 1, we can see that the queue is set to 1, and if we start going down, you can see that that has changed to 10. But that's the basics of how you use Intruder. As we start to go through more and more videos and showcase more and more techniques of how to find these kind of vulnerabilities, you're going to see these attacks come up, and you're going to see why Intruder is so impactful. But for now, we're just going to discard and move on to the next, which is Repeater. And the Repeater, again, is very similar to Intruder in the sense that you can still send requests, and it'll come back with specific information. So Repeater is essentially meant for you to be able to easily identify vulnerabilities based on the inputs that you show. So when I, let's say, do email as the parameter, if I do a single quote and then another single quote, if I see that the response changes, chances are I have an SQL injection. Or if I try to put, let's say, a basic XSS payload such as this, I can easily see that this may work, this may not, based on the search results. If I go down to, let's say image source equals X on error, obviously there's no match now, but if the website was vulnerable to an XSS, you may be able to see it on this end, and then you can confirm it based on that. But something that I really like to do with Repeater is rename tabs, which is something that a lot of people don't do during a pen test, and I'm someone who also forgets to do this at times. But if you find a vulnerability or suspect a vulnerability is within this request, you can mark it and come back to it later. So in this case, let's say we do think that there's an XSS, you could put, potential XSS within the header. And what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that you don't forget about it. You don't want to forget about something like this, because if there is an XSS, you can get a nice bounty payout, or you can help secure the client. Additionally, if you have numerous tabs, you can create something called tab groups. And what you have to do is click on add to tab group and create a tab group. You can name it whatever you want. So let's say we're doing a race condition. We can name it race condition. And we can just put specific tabs within it. So let's just do 1, 2. We'll click on create. And whenever a tab is within a group, you can click on send, and there's a few different options that you can do. When you're doing a race condition, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to send everything as a single connection, not as separate connections. Sequentially, you're going to want to do it as a single connection just to see if there's a rate limit in place. When you click send to group, obviously there's nothing within this one. So what I could do here is I'll just send it to Repeater a couple of times, and these are all going to be within the group by default. And what we could do is we could send it to a single connection, And after a few seconds, you can see that it does send the information over to all of the different tabs. So again, nothing really too crazy, but a really neat trick that you can use within the repeater tab. The Collaborator, again, it is a pro version. There's a lot of limitations when it comes to Community Edition. There's also alternatives with Burp Suite that you can use to prevent something like this. So when it comes to Collaborator, if you do not have Burp Collaborator, you can use something called InteractSH, which you may have seen on some of the API-sec CTF videos that I've done in the past. And essentially what that does is it takes the quote-unquote Collaborator that's by default on Burp Suite and use it within the CLI. So instead of using it directly within Burp Suite, you'll just have it on a CLI instead. The sequencer, I don't really use too much. I don't know too much about this tab, to be completely honest, but it's basically a live capture feature that you can use. Again, I'm not going to go into specifics because I don't really use it. But the decoder is a fantastic tool if you have a lot of URL encoding. If you suspect that there's base 64 within the application, you can come over here and you can decode specific things. So in our case, let's just say we want to encode, because you could do decode and encode. Let's say we want to encode to base 64. You can do just that. And let's say we want to decode to from base 64. You can do that as well. The comparer is pretty cool. And so what we're going to do is we'll head back on over to here and we'll send it over to the comparer and we'll modify this a little bit to just say test at Emory Security, and we'll send it on over to the comparer. And essentially what the comparer is meant to do is it's meant to compare based on words or bytes within a request or a response. So clicking on words, we could see that there is a difference, right? So first and foremost, you can see that down here we have a keypad. So we have modified, deleted, and added. If it's red or orangish color, we could see that it was modified. And as we could see here, so evan.isaac has been modified to test at emorysecurity.com. And we see that we deleted the XSS payload here. Pretty neat if you want to see and compare specific things. Let's say that you have, I don't know, let's say that the response is a little bit different, but you don't know what the difference is. You can come over here and it'll highlight specifically what the difference is. So if there's a header that maybe changes within the response or the request changes for whatever reason, you can come here and compare the different requests. The logger is really neat. It just kind of logs everything that you do, which is super nice. So if you want to go back and just check out something, you can within here. But I really like to use the HTTP history. That's kind of the bread and butter. What I will say though is this is really good for if you're using the repeater tab and you want to go back, you can come to the log section and you can come back here and it'll show you if it's in the repeater, in the intruder, whatever it is, you can see it based on the logs specified. The organizer, I really don't use too much, so I'm not going to go into it. But we also have the extensions, which I showed you before. And the extensions I'm going to do in a separate video because there's a lot to cover in it, like Bambda libraries. If I'm saying that correctly, let me know in the comment section down below if I'm saying that incorrectly, because I guarantee I am. But we can also see what Burp Suite extensions are installed and the errors associated with those. So in our case, it looks like we have a bunch of weird errors coming from Java. It's Java. What do you expect? But this is the basics of how you use Burp Suite. If you do have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. I will be doing more videos about Burp Suite because this is basically the bread and butter of application security. This is what almost everyone uses. And again, I'm going to be showing you a few other alternatives that you can use besides Burp Suite, but that's not going to be in this video. That'll be in a different video coming up soon. But if you did enjoy this video, please share it, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.